In this particular as part of our study on Southern Baptists and the Great Commission, we're going to be examining planting churches and different church models. The first one we're looking at is Bivo Churches Can Grow. This deals with a bivocational pastor and some of the various aspects of a bivocational church. First of all, numerical growth. One of the ways that we measure that is how many people come to worship. Are the worship services the best they can be? Do they reflect who you are and not what you want to be? What changes need to be made? How many people come to Sunday school or small groups? Are teachers in the right classroom, and do they come on time? Are the right teachers teaching the right classes? Sometimes you've got the wrong teacher in the wrong class. For a bivocational pastor, that becomes a difficult task for them many times because you're working another job and you don't have the opportunity to put the time into some of this. So you're going to have to look for some very key leaders to help you with this. Are the facilities the best they can be? I'm not talking about extravagant. I'm not even talking about the top line facilities, but do you make it the best you can be? Have you done any outreach promotion? How many people come to midweek? If you have a midweek service, is it service worthy of people making the effort to come? And that's something you've really got to look at. Do something that makes people want to come because you're offering something they need. Then you have to deal with growth in people, corporate growth. Now you may have to click this several times to get all of it up on each slide. I'm just not sure. Spiritual growth. Have your people begun to grow spiritually, and are they helping others grow? Family growth. Are families getting close together, or is divorce in the air? Knowledge growth. Do adults and children understand the basic gospel? How do you know? Missional growth. Is the church centered on what happens with membership with new people, inward or outward? Giving to mission causes. Has your mission giving gone up, down, or stayed about the same? Birthing a new church baby. Has reproduction occurred yet in your church? Beginning outreach ministries. How many ministries do you currently have outside the walls of the church? And then in bivocational life too, you're going to have to think about your personal growth as a pastor. Spiritual growth, Bible reading, memorization, prayer. Relational, family, church members, people outside the church. Physical, exercise, play, rest, laughter. Professional, reading, seminars, college. That basically is the process. You need to grow spiritually. Then you need to spend time with your family, your relational. And then you've got church members, people outside the church. Then you need the physical time. So it's not impossible. It just takes a well orchestrated discipline of time. Why grow? Number one, it's biblical. This is to my Father's glory that you bear much fruit, showing yourselves to be my disciples. It's helpful to do more things as the church body grows, to have more ministries, more mature disciples working. To God, we were saved to grow. It's respectful to God. To others, Jesus came to seek and save those that are lost. There's also hindrances to growth: disappointment, discouragement, disorganization, disgust, disillusionment, disengagement, that's just laziness. Now, then move to looking at your Jerusalem strategy. Ask yourself the following questions. What are the physical boundaries of my church's Jerusalem responsibility? Do these boundaries overlap with other churches? Are there any towns in this area that do not have a good gospel witness or preaching point? Are there any unreached people groups in this area? Begin praying for unreached people groups and unreached towns. Share your findings with your church so everyone can begin praying specifically. As God leads, begin outreach activities that fit those places or people that are lost. Everyone begins and continues to pray. Luke 10:2, for God to send laborers and leaders. Encourage church members to pray about their being an answer to the Luke 10:2 prayer. Church growth. If you look at the numbers of people who come to your church each week, you will probably want to resign at least 26 times a year. However, if you begin to reach out, you will have many opportunities for feeling good about ministry. Remember, Paul's successful thought pattern came from having multiple ministries where he could see God at work all the time, not just one church or one group of church people. The bivocational challenges. Time management, both with family, job, and ministry. Training lay people, basic discipleship, future bivocational pastors. Taking time to formulate a vision for yourself, for the leadership of the church. And that's the end. I would encourage you to think about this. If God's leading you to become a bivocational pastor, church planner, there's a lot of challenges that come into play with this, but it is one way for planning a church that's feasible. And I would also encourage you, unless it's in an area where there's no way of the church ever becoming one that can sustain a pastor or staff on a full-time basis, then work towards seeing it grow and become that God wants it to be. You're in a band of brothers. Don't ever forget that. Bivocational pastors have been around a lot longer than fully funded pastors. Never apologize for being bivocational. Never look down on that. Don't feel bad about not being fully funded. God has called people to serve in this capacity. Consider sponsoring a bivocational church plant. Wherever you go, allow people to know bivocational pastors rock. My dad was a bivocational pastor for a while. He later became fully funded, but I know the struggles that he had. I was 15 when Dad started pastoring, and I watched Dad struggle with the time restraints. And I always thought the world of my dad, and I really appreciated the fact he was willing to put forth the effort to do both. So I encourage you today, if God leads you in this way, don't hesitate to do it. There's a number of church planning models. I want to share some of those with you. I'll move through them pretty quick. There's the program-based church planning model. That's the planning of a church that will minister to people and grow through various church programs. Evangelism, discipleship, youth, children, men, women, etc. Purpose-driven. This is based on Rick Warren's planning churches with the 5 purposes of a church identified by Rick Warren. Outreach, worship, fellowship, discipleship, and service. A very good model. Seeker focus based is planning the churches with an intentional target of specific seeker population. The only thing I would say about this, I have a letter Bill Hybels put out a number of years ago after 25 years at Willow Creek, I believe is the name of it, where they were predominantly seeker sensitive, and he said they had failed at making disciples, that they were going to have to go back and start over with a blank sheet of paper again and try to figure out the things that they could have done better. He said, we've taught you how to draw a crowd, we've taught you how to reach out to get people to come, but we've just failed at producing disciples. That's his statement, is basically paraphrasing it. And so this is when you really have to think about, if you do this type model, how are you going to make disciples? Is it just going to be for those who come in? If it is, you're going to be very simple. You're not going to grow people too much because you're trying just to get them to come to seek out and to reach them. I'm not suggesting it can't be done. It's just a more difficult way, I believe. Now, that's just my opinion, and you do not have to agree with me, that's for sure. Another model is ministry-based. Church that goes into a community, impacts people's lives, and draw them toward the gospel. Relationship relational base, relatively new, and attempts to solve the riddle of reaching congregation and congregationally postmodern relation-based churches are nothing more than a network of single-cell churches. They're fluid, they're spread along relational lines through people networks. Affinity-based, that's an ethnic or cultural group, can be defined by language, socioeconomic factors, lifestyle preferences, or other distinguishing characteristics. I pastored a church once. We had a mission in a low-income area. Went well for a while. We were able to lead them to become a viable church with a bivocational pastor. And I would encourage you to consider that. If I had it to go over, I probably would not have turned that group loose because about 10 years out they folded. And if we had kept them with us, I think they could still be there having a viable ministry, but they really did need the help. So I look at that and think I missed it there as the leader. Affinity based, language based, a second generation Hispanic English speaking new church set aside 2% of their budget for church planning. Now they're running over 180 in worship. So this is the type of example that could be done. And here's some of this is not an exhaustive list, but Anglo, Hispanic, African American, Korean, Cambodian, Native American, Vietnamese, Filipino, Laotian, Haitian, deaf, military, governmental, medical, postmodern. Other areas, the benefit of theater worship and how it works. Areas that some people are using, theater circuits are highly visible, convenient with easy access, ample parking. Varied auditorium sizes can accommodate large or small groups. Larger auditoriums seats up to 450, and multiple auditoriums could accommodate up to 1,000. You can also have satellite downlinks. Two-way audio connects you with audience around the country in a more powerful manner than what it might be otherwise. It's considered cutting edge in some places. It's kind of old now in some places. You've got the good projection, cutting edge projection. You've got good digital sound. You can have engaged and energized audiences. You can have high impact, high quality worship. You've got big screens for projections. Auditoriums give plenty of space for stage, musical instruments, worship team. You can also lease, in many cases, the lobby for meet and greet, signage, literature displays, refreshment. Small auditoriums would work well for children or youth. Built-in seating, audio-visual, minimized setup, and tear-down time. Most theaters offer the stadium-style seating, provided unobstructed views of the worship leaders. Legal Center meetings and events. This is one of the groups during the time of Katrina, back a number of years ago. They really got involved in helping a low-cost place for churches to plant and to grow, and that was largely where a lot of this started. So how do you get? Well, choose a location. I put their old website. It may still be valid, but some of the things you need to do is find a location, select the number of auditoriums you need, 1, 2, 3, 4, ever how many. Choose a length of contract, 12 weeks or 1 year. It depends on where you're at in the church plant, and you'll have to make that call. Execute the contract, choose a launch date, and lastly, begin aggressive marketing your new location. Now, what you should include in a contract is you're going to have 4-hour rental, 5-hour rental. I put 4-hour because generally that's enough time. You may have a 1-hour setup and tear down. You have to consider the lobby access, event coordinator, up to 50% off retail price if you use their refreshment area. See about that kind of thing, multi-auditorium discounts. The worship experience of Riverside Baptist Church, located in downtown Denver, Colorado, consistently pull congregation. I'm tongue-tied today. Members of their congregation from the entire metro system. They learned a new transit system expansion project was going to congest their area for 5 years, so they began looking for an alternate satellite location. They looked at school or performing arts theaters, but they weren't satisfied, so they turned to movie theaters. It was a novelty of the theater atmosphere, had a tremendous advantage, said the pastor. Other than structural benefits, Regal provides people are really embracing the innovative venue, a refreshing, new, convenient, unconventional worship experience. Today, Riverside continues to mate in a Regal Theater with high attendance. They're beginning to consider using Regal satellite technology to broadcast the service into another theater. Those are just some of the advantages of using theaters. Regal's not the only one, it's just the one that had been involved the longest, perhaps. Be a kingdom builder. Every church can, and every church. Our association, church, planning needs. Look at the population of the association or zip code. White Anglo, African American, Hispanic, Asian, Native American. The Southern Baptist Church to population ratio. How many churches for every number of people? SBC Church to population ratio. Blank church for every how many people? Population church for every how many people? Hispanic. Same thing for Asian or Native American. The types of churches you need in the various association. And again, you look at the various infinity groups. Now you begin to try to find out the population of these various groups, and then you begin to pray about and ask God to lead you in this. The biblical example of church planning. The account of the first kingdom building churches in Acts 1:8, Acts 11:13, 14. What is a kingdom building church? A reproducing community of disciples living authentic lives as ambassadors for Christ, proclaiming the gospel and transforming their world. A kingdom building church sees missions as the essence of its existence. Acts 1:8. A kingdom building church does not have a program for missions, they participate in missions. Acts 11:19 through 30 reveals 6 ways they participated in missions. They were people focused, they were Christ centered, spirit empowered, grace conscious, well known, financially generous. A kingdom building church is not satisfied to send and support, they emphasize being and doing. Read Acts 13:1 through 3. It talks about at Antioch, at the church there were prophets, teachers, Barnabas, Simeon, called Niger, Lucius of Cyrene, Manaen, that had been brought up with Herod, and Saul. And while they were worshiping the Lord and fasting, the Holy Spirit said, "Set apart for me Barnabas and Saul for the work to which I've called them." So after they had fasted and prayed, they placed their hands on them and sent them off. A kingdom building church emphasizes being and doing again. Ten ways your church can be a kingdom builder. Engaging in strategic intercessory prayer. You can pray for pockets of lostness, church planning leaders, spiritual breakthrough. Engage in strategic intercessory prayer. Children, youth, and adults can do this. Prayer walks on the field gets the church members involved. It can also turn into ministry moments as you meet people. Adopt a church planner and his family. Encourage them. Invite them to lunch. Send them to a conference or retreat. Provide child care. Let him and his wife go on a date. A lot of different ways to do this. Contribute to the church's financial needs. There are always going to be financial needs. Startup cost, maybe one time, maybe monthly. Do what God leads you to do. He won't lead you to do what he can't provide for you to do. Business leaders can help provide jobs for planners too. Provide materials and equipment. Now, let me just say this. This slide's basically about providing materials and equipment, but don't give them junk. I mean, I've been around doing this long enough with various churches, and one last thing you need is to give them something you wouldn't use. You need to help them, but just be cautious in what you do. Sharing your campus facilities. Provide office space, worship space, open up homes for Bible study, fellowship events. All of this can be a great way to be an assist to a churches. Serving on a church planting mission trip. Youth groups, college students, adults can assist. I've been on several of these. It's a lot of fun. Some of them week long, some of them day trips, some of them, longer. You can do surveys, block parties, backyard Bible clubs, neighborhood canvassing, just anything that you can do. But let me insert here also. If you're going to help a church planter, help him, don't hinder him. And, that's enough to say about it. Discover underreached people in your community. You can identify people groups that are not being reached by any evangelical ministry. Churches engage these groups with ministries, meeting community needs, sowing the seeds of the gospel. Start an outreach Bible study to become a new church. Bible studies are a great way to start out, and that might develop into a church as God leads. You can do this in homes, apartments, clubhouses, workplace, break rooms, civic buildings. Just be willing to be a servant. That's the big thing. And sending people and families to help encourage members to prayerfully consider serving with a new church for a fixed period of time. Children, youth, and music leaders can provide new churches with experienced leadership while influencing the development of new leaders. Mentor church planning leaders. Help. Either do this or help. Staff and program leaders can reproduce themselves by sharing their insights. Pastors can expand influence by mentoring church planners in pastoral leadership. Are you ready for the multi-site church revolution? This is one of the more popular things going on today in church planning. So let's look at this. Today there's more than 1,000 churches experimenting with multi-site experiences. It really started around 1985 with the idea of Elmer Towns to consider an option for an expanded geography model. Taking root, new name, new vigor. According to Leadership Network research, there's at least 1,000 in North America using this. Tom Rayner from Lifeway believes more than 30% of the churches he surveyed are toying with the idea. The most obvious strength is it increases effectiveness in evangelism. So why should you consider going to multi-site? You might be out of space, need new room for expansion, parking lot is full, not able to expand. Personnel staff limitations fuel simultaneous venues often by video casting. You want to reach those not churched. Takes the church to the people right where they are. If you're having 200 plus in attendance in a worship service, you're able to venture into this multi-site strategy. You want to plant a new church and like the possibility of launching the new work with a larger than usual core group. You want to turn the tide of growth in your region. Now, here's some of the challenges. What's the role of the preaching teaching team? In some cases, you've got one preacher broadcasting by video or broadcasting by satellite all over the country to various locations. Now, let me just kind of express where I'm at with this. I struggle with some of this because I see some guys who appear, and I can't read their heart. I don't know their motive. And that's the reason I want to present the challenges. I've had a couple of friends who struggled with this, wanted to do it, and they came and talked to me because they know that I have some questions about it. And the biggest question I have is God leading you to do this, or are you trying to be a star? In other words, you've got a campus pastor, and many times just as good a speaker as the main church pastor. And I don't understand, I really struggle with why does the main church not develop another church and let that campus pastor be the preacher there? I see this better personally as a means of developing a new church plant and making that go, and then letting that campus pastor come in or get another pastor to come in and be the preacher teacher. Now, if God calls you to do this, do it. Don't listen to me on it. I just want you to answer these questions. Why are you doing it? Be sure your motive's right. If your motive's not right, you're not going to benefit anybody by doing this. That's the only question that I would encourage you to answer. You got to consider the role of music, drama, leadership. Is all this going to be broadcast? Or are you going to have in the other multiple venues or sites a different praise team? You're going to do different videos. How will you do this? And there's a lot of different ways to do it. You just got to work through all of these things, I believe. And while they are challenges, I think they're a little more than challenges. I think they get down to why you want to do it. Maintaining the focus of the staff when there's multiple campuses. How does the staff stay together as a team? How do you focus on the issues? Would Church A here and Church B 30 miles away or 100 miles away, are the communities different? Can you do the same thing? Do you need to evaluate different aspects there? Only you can do that. I have some good friends who are involved in this. Some of my former students are. And, I pray for them, I encourage them, but I continually ask them, why are you doing it? And I just want you to be sure you're doing it because God's called you to do it. I struggle with it personally. I'll be honest with you about that. And the reasons that I put out mainly has to do with the motive and why. And I know some good preachers who are campus pastors. They're just as good of preachers, Bible preachers, as the main church pastor. And so I think we really need to get away from the stardom among preachers and all just be servants of God. And that's kind of where I'm coming from when I say this. Questions to consider before you jump full speed ahead. How far can you expand and keep the level that the people are accustomed to? Because you're talking about ministry here. What will the new venue look like? Is it going to mirror the main campus or different? How will the main campus and satellite carry on a unified vision for reaching the target? What will be the covenant relationship between both sides? What's the critical milepost that will display success and viability? And what about autonomy with a satellite? Who determines the next pastor if a pastor leaves? Does a satellite have anything to do with it? Remember, this strategy, while becoming popular among large and extremely large Christian bodies, is also a good way to plant churches. The real strength of the multi-site is not that it grows a church. The real power behind it is it keeps a church growing. And that's very true. And when the church moves away from its four-wall expression, it will discover the power of reproduction. I hope some of these models that I've gone over with you will help you. These are not an exhaustive study. All of these come from certain aspects of Southern Baptist life. I've taken the parts that still apply for the most part today. Some of them are older, some are more up to date, and I've just kind of put them together into one presentation. So I hope that this will help you some. I've included the part from the textbook that we compiled on planting churches, so you can check through that and see if there's anything that you may have missed.